Thanks so much for joining us on the Show Me Institute podcast. Rob Enlow of EdChoice. You've been executive director, CEO there for how long?
Since 2009.
That's a long time.
Well, not
Um,
as long as when I started in 1996. So 30 years this year.
it's 30 years.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I don't know how time is flying, but I wanted to have you on to talk about a couple things that are going on recently, and one thing in particular, which is, there's poll after poll, there's election after election. It seems to be the case that capitalism is losing favor with the American public. Socialism is gaining steam with the American public. And recently, I saw an editorial about the fact that J.D. Vance has said that Milton Friedman is essentially no longer relevant. That Milton Friedman's ideas made sense in the 80s, but it's no longer relevant for today. We need more of a Hamiltonian economic plan than what Milton Friedman put forth. And of course, Milton Friedman's seminal work, Capitalism and Freedom, is now 70 years old. And I just realized 20 years ago, you edited a volume on his work, Liberty and Learning. And certainly you worked side by side with him. You ran his foundation before he died, and you know him. And I'm just curious, your thoughts on whether or not Milton Friedman is still relevant.
I think we need more Milton, not less right now. And I think we need far less Hamilton central banking, centralized scrutinizers. To quote, the great Frank Zappa, I need no more central scrutinizers in our life, regardless of whether they come from the right or the left, right? There is a distrust in systems across the board. Whether you're right or left. And some people respond to that by saying we need to have a socialist system. And some people respond to that by saying we need to have a Hamiltonian sort of centralized control system. Milton Friedman's correct solution is that we need a bottom-up system of individual liberty and enlightened self-interest. And we need far more of that than we need less.
So why is it out of favor now? Like, what do you think is going on that the idea of the government taking care of housing, healthcare, education, the basic foundations of each individual's life, that the government should be managing that? Is it just too far in the rearview mirror, the idea of individual liberty and individual responsibility, and folks haven't seen it recently enough? Or is it, or maybe it's neither of these, or is it that the particular form of capitalism that folks are seeing right now, where some people are making a ton of money and a lot of people are not making much at all, is that what's causing this backlash to capitalism?
So what people are seeing is absolutely causing a backlash. Let's just say that. Like, I have a 28-year-old son, and he and I argue about this constantly, right? And I love him for that. Everyone seems and sees that both government is a major problem, but also there's just a massive inequity in how our systems of competition are working. What people forget is what Milton would say about that. He would say, we do not have a free market. We do not have individual liberty, and we don't. What's happening in America and what's happening around the world is Milton's greatest fear. And it's also beginning to happen in education reform, even among some of our allies. The idea of regulatory capture. People forget that what ends up happening, and it was in chapter 6 is Milton's, and Free to Choose is Milton's book, story on what's wrong with our schools. People often forget chapter 7, which is who protects the consumer. And in that chapter, he talks a lot about what used to happen with the old ICC, the sort of Interstate Commerce Commission, right, and the Railroad Commission, and how at one point, all these people got together from right and left to create a change to a massive problem. That problem got changed. Everyone was all happy, and all the advocates went home, and the bureaucrats were left to put it in place. The bureaucrats did what? They put it in place in a self-interested way, and now all of a sudden you have to come and reform the reform. This is what's happening I think, both writ large in America and certainly with education. I think there's this just real challenge with regulatory capture. this is true among private schools, charter schools. The minute sometimes schools get into a choice program, like, well, we don't want any other schools in these programs. And so this regulatory capture is not a free market. Milton would be railing against that as much as he would be about anything else, in my opinion.
And always go back to this very simple explanation of the four ways to spend money, right? And clearly, the least careful way is when you spend other people's money on other people. And the idea that folks want to expand that exponentially right now concerns me because we're just going to be burning more money for worse results.
Ideas like ESAs are so important, and direct funding of families where they have to pay something and have the actual act of paying. I think that puts skin in the game. I mean, for your listeners, maybe they don't remember the four ways Milton said how you spend money, but I
Tell
think it's
me.
important. Well, you know it, but and I always use this with you and I. Like if I spend my money on you, I am super careful about how much I spend. I don't care what I buy. Right? If I spend
Huh?
your money on me, I'm super careful about what I get, but I don't care how much I spend, right?
Right.
And if you spend someone else's money on someone else, you don't care about how much you spend or how much you buy, right? And I think that is our problem right now. And you mix that with companies, associations, unions that all make it harder for others to enter the marketplace. This is the real challenge of barriers to entry, right? We're seeing this in K-12 education now, where a bad story creates a desire to have a regulatory impulse. This is not the right way to go. We should be going towards more freedom. And I think this is what young people are reacting to, Susan. In my opinion, people like my son and others are reacting to the basic, obvious problem. The government is not capable of doing it, but the current structure of entering a marketplace is impossible and only advantages some.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Clearly, the idea of parents choosing where their kids go to school is an extremely popular idea. You guys pull it every month. I think as long as those polls have existed, it's been 70%
Yep.
plus parents want to do this. And yet that's one that's being strongly resisted by the same folks that are, leaning towards socialism. Like they want to really lock the doors on letting kids out of the worst schools.
So you know me and my background. So for those of you who don't know, I actually did liberation theology work back in the day before I got to Milton Friedman's organization. And then I got to meet Milton Friedman, which, by the way, in about 12 seconds, I felt like a minuscule intellect because he's so incredibly smart. But I call my transition from liberation to liberty. And part of that is because I think Dr. Friedman and I think the radical left, the socialist left, identify the problem. The problem is ineffective government and systems that do not work for people, right? So you have whether it's an oppressive government or a fascist government or a dictatorial government, it is not working for people, right?
Right.
Now, the socialists and those who will argue, well, then the best solution is my view of government because I'm better, right? So, in a sort of old George H.W. Bush way, it's a kinder, gentler kind of socialism, right? Um, my way better than others. Milton's argument was no. The solution to this government problem is to give individuals more ability and autonomy. This is common sense that I don't think a lot of our younger folks understand anymore. But the interesting thing, it's a difference, I think, between their public and private life.
Yeah.
Publicly, they say this is a problem. We got to solve this problem. Privately, they use choice and competition and individualization and customization more than any generation ever before.
Right.
Right? This is their entire life, and it's called a cell phone. And
Yeah.
every app leads them to individual customization.
Thank God that's not my problem.
You mean scrolling, doom scrolling?
Yeah.
Your
Thank God
problem.
I never scroll. But I just feel like there is a disconnect. You're exactly right. Of course, they want more choice and everything. And I don't want to say they, but because I think this is also sort of crossing generational lines that this idea that capitalism is evil and bad and is creating, I think we see a lot of crony capitalism right now. We see our elected officials making billions of dollars and buying up parts of like we see this weird form of capitalism, and then we have the vice president himself saying it's not relevant anymore. You know what I mean? It's for the 80s and it's not relevant anymore. And maybe people are just buying that. Maybe they're just like, okay, I guess not. I guess capitalism is on the way out. And what's the next thing? And socialism is being sold pretty in a pretty neat package,
Yeah,
right?
but you know who's not buying it anymore? This is, I think, the hope for the future. Communities of color.
Yeah,
So communities of color are seeing the importance of unleashing rampant individual capitalism and rampant opportunity. You see this with micro schools and homeschooling.
yeah,
The fastest rise of homeschooling is in the Black community. The same thing is often true in the micro school community. It is communities who are most challenged often and sometimes most oppressed that understand the benefits of opportunity in free markets in a way that you might argue bougie suburbanites who go to Columbia don't get,
right.
right? And that is, of course, I think a problem of privilege, right? More than anything. And so I think that's a challenge for our society. But I think, you know, I'm watching communities of color just embrace competition and individual and
Yeah.
liberty in a way that I've never seen before in education. And I think we'll get there again. Um, but I think right now there's a real disillusionment. And I think part of it's to do with our current government and with our previous government. We've not had a really good go of it the last two times.
Yeah, and I've met many parents from communities of color, like Black parents, Black moms, who will do anything to make sure that their kids get the same opportunities as particularly if they're economically disadvantaged, make sure their kids get the same educational opportunities. And they are the ones that are pressing. In Missouri, there are groups of parents pressing for open enrollment, pressing to expand our ESA program.
Mhm.
I mean, going to Jefferson City, learning how to be politically active, and they're putting pressure on these folks also to like get their kids out of unsafe schools and to stop being told, yeah, I'm sorry, I know only 3% of the kids are proficient in math in your school, but we can't let you out of it. They've had it with that argument, right? And they're the ones that are really pressing it. I don't know if it's landing because we've made some progress, but we haven't really
I'll tell you where
overcame
it's
the
landing,
system,
Susan.
but
Here's what you got to remember. It's landing here. What is the enrollment in our traditional schools looking like right now?
down,
Down
trend,
dramatically, right?
dim,
What is the enrollment in and effort in what I would call what Vela, my dear friends at Vela call indie education, right? It's dramatically increasing, right? And this is the proof of the positive. Milton used to say the readiness for a true free market can be seen in the prior years by an underground marketplace. And in
yeah,
many ways, we have an underground marketplace of education happening, which is fantastic. It's leading
yeah,
to so many opportunities. You've done the research in Arizona and other
yeah.
places. The massive growth of new vendors, the massive growth of opportunity is really amazing. And
It's only limited by what parents can think up.
yeah,
And they just keep thinking up new stuff,
yeah,
you know?
it's
I mean, it's like,
shocking. I mean, Milton's quote is always true. There's not been another way heretofore discovered to raise the masses out of poverty than what happens when you unleash the free market and capitalism, right? Um, and I think the challenges that we're seeing with capitalism and with liberty and with the view of liberty now are problems related to government and cronyism and regulatory capture. I don't think people realize when a legislator says, "Oh, how do I know if someone's learning?" Well, you know what doesn't tell them if someone's learning? A test that they have to take once a year after a certain period of time. That does not really tell you. All it gives you is a mark in the day in the life of a kid.
right.
And by the way, those are not doing very well, right?
Not in Missouri.
Not anywhere,
No,
right? I don't want to rely on that system to tell me how kids are doing. And I think people see this huge disconnect between what they're told and what they're seeing in real life, and they want to do it themselves. Young kids want to do it themselves.
that's right. And parents know when their kids can't read, right?
Correct.
And
Correct.
they know when their kids are watching too many movies at school and they don't want to get on the bus. And I mean, parents know all of that. And if
Yep.
they don't have any options, I mean,
And what's exciting, sorry,
you
what's
certainly work to expand options for parents. And I know we're up 1.5 million maybe in private school choice programs, maybe closer to two.
Yeah, I think it's more important to look at what's happening in some states, right? So it's 1.5 million across the country. I
Hmm.
mean, that's tripled in
Yeah.
7 years, which is amazing in terms of on publicly funded private school choice. You got to look what's happened in places like Florida and Arizona and Arkansas and places like that. Florida has gone since 2001 to today from 89% kids in their assigned public schools to barely 50%.
Yeah.
Right? You're
Uh,
seeing diversity of choice and the future of education, and I think therefore the growth of liberty in educational marketplaces is in the following three things. There are fewer kids, there are dramatically more options, and there's no money.
yeah.
And so that will lead to in my opinion, a free market system of education far faster than any kind of top-down socialist idea,
And then they're gonna all come back and blame you, right? Like the
typically.
idea that school choice is the reason that, I mean, Missouri enrollment is down. It's projected to go more down. I've looked at kindergarten cohorts. It's absolutely going down. They continue to hire teachers. And when they have to start laying off teachers and closing school buildings, they're going to say it's because of school choice. And of course, it isn't because of school choice. But when parents can have school choice, they take it.
The only system where I've seen you blame the customer for a failure of your product. I
Yeah.
just never seen anything like it in the country. We literally education failures are blamed on parents who don't want to go to educational failures,
Yeah.
right? It's crazy.
And then in Missouri, they'll lock the door on them. It's like, well, too bad. You can't leave. So maybe it's just a matter of not needing to refer to any of this as capitalism, because when it comes down to it, parents don't really care what it's called. As
Yeah.
long as they can pick their kid's
Yeah,
school, they don't
parents
really
don't
care.
look, the reality is parents don't know if it's a charter school, private school, or public school or
Yep.
whatever most of the time, and that's okay with me, right?
Yeah.
The reality is do they have power and control over how the money is spent and where their kids go? And the best thing we know about it, in my opinion, from the data that we've seen, and we'll continue to see this, is families who make choices make better choices over time.
Yeah.
Right. So this is one of the most amazing things. Like you start and you say, hey, I want a good school for my kid. I think this is better. Right. And then they get in there and like 3 years later, they're like, what's the test scores and how's it working? And what's your pedagogy? And because shockingly, the more options you have, the better customer you become because you care more.
That's right.
I use this story all the time. When I was a kid, I asked my mother for a 10-speed. I got it for Christmas and proceeded to leave it outside. And the next by the fall, it was all rusted and nasty. And I said, "Hey, Mom, I need another 10-speed." And she says, "No, but if you earn half of it, I'll buy the other half." Well, I earned half of it, and she bought it for me. Guess how well taken care of that
Yeah.
10-speed?
You didn't leave it outside, right?
What happens, right? So when you put some
Yeah.
skin in the game, and when you allow free markets to work, this is what
Yeah.
families will get benefited.
So Milton Friedman's still relevant.
I think Milton Friedman
It
will become
bothers
the
me
next.
to even hear it be said, but yes, go
Well,
ahead.
no. So actually, I think what's really interesting, I think Milton Friedman, if you read Michael Carnuti's Wall Street Journal piece, which is amazing, the other day about Milton and this whole conversation, I think Milton is the countercultural revolution that's coming.
Okay.
Like
Tell me
I
more.
think Milton is both. I mean, one of the things about knowing him and getting to know him over the last decade of his life was he was an equal opportunity challenger.
Yeah.
If he was a right leaning guy that didn't like free markets, he would immediately call out a right leaning guy that didn't
Yeah.
like free markets. If it was a left leaning, he would do the same thing. Um, Milton was about true individual liberty. I think we're going to get back to that kind of countercultural revolution. Just by the way, like it was seen in Eastern Europe and
Yeah.
Latin America. I think that's the next thing in America. You'll see communities who are poor reading Milton Friedman in the basement.
I love it. Well, you heard it here first. Maybe you can come back and talk to us more about it.
I'm
Well,
happy. Thanks so much for having me.
thanks
I
so
really
much.
appreciate it.
Appreciate it.